Unexpectedly, no one in the spiritual communication array was listening to him. It was like something big had happened, and every heavenly official was noisily blabbering. Xie heard Feng Xin yell, "Your Highness, did you say something? It's really chaotic here right now." Xie raised his voice. "Feng Xin, I said, Ling Wen was the one who created the brocade immortal. She's run away wearing it. Watch out for her." "What?" Feng Xin shouted. "That's happened?" Xie was about to expand on the details when the noise by his ear abruptly stopped, and nothing more could be heard. Taken aback, he tried calling again. "Everyone? Is everyone still there?" he asked. He called a couple of times, but no one answered. Hua Cheng spoke up. "It's no use. The spiritual communication array of the upper court was set up by Ling Wen. She must have broken it up just now. It'll need to be rebuilt." "What should we do then?" Xie gaped. Usually, when he communicated with the upper court, it was either through the spiritual communication array, through Ling Wen directly, or through the Windmaster. He didn't know the verbal password of any of the other heavenly officials. Now that he could no longer depend on Ling Wen or the Windmaster, and the communication array was destroyed, what should he do? Hua Cheng seemed to see through his worries and said, "Don't worry, didn't Gogo already report the key issue? Not all the heavenly officials of the upper court are idiots. And Junwu is also in the heavenly court right now. It'll be fine once the message passes through." Xie thought that too and nodded. After his mad dash, they had already crossed through several mountain tops, leaving those masters far behind them. But it seemed they wouldn't be able to keep up with the Brocade Immortal and Chuan Yijin after all. Hua Cheng added, "If Gurkha still wants to investigate the Brocade Immortal, you'll have to hurry." However, Xie shook his head. "That was before," he said. "Qi Ying's already chasing after Ling Wen, so right now we've got more important matters on our hands." Sun Lang. He stared intently at Hua Cheng in his arms. "Your form, it seems to have changed again." Before, when Hua Cheng was disguised as Lang Ying, he had the appearance of a 15 to 16-year-old boy, and it wasn't easy for Xie to carry him. Even though he could, it didn't look good. But now, Hua Cheng's body seemed to have shrunk in size, looking to be at most 11 or 12. Xie could carry him single-handedly and have him perch on his arm. Be that as it may, Hua Cheng's air of steady calm had never wavered. "It's a non-issue," Hua Cheng said. "Changing form is only a temporary plan. After this whole thing is over, my old self will return." He unwrapped the bandages on his head as he spoke. On that snow-white face, a pair of deep black eyes watched Xie. Between his brows were still shadows of that handsome young man. It was clearly the face of a child, but his air and expression had the laid-backness he always assumed. Xie watched him dazedly, not speaking a word. Hua Cheng frowned slightly and said, "Your Highness, you..." Suddenly, Xielian's other hand reached out and squeezed his cheek. This was so out of the blue. Hua Cheng widened his eyes as his face changed shape from the squishing. "Gurgur," he shouted. Xie laughed. "Sorry, Sun Lang, but you're too cute. I can't help myself." He laughed again. Xie squished him tenderly as he said gently, "Then, Sun Lang, are you going to keep changing? Are you going to turn into a toddler of 5 or 6? Or even better, a little baby?" Hearing his hopeful voice, Hua Chang replied helplessly, "I'm afraid I will have to disappoint Gogo." Xie Lian dropped his hand and grinned. "Nonsense," he said. "San Lang has never disappointed me. I'm really happy to have this chance to protect you." However, Hua Chang said glumly, "I'm not happy." "How come?" Xie Lian asked. Hua Chang's voice turned cold. I hate looking like this," he said. Xie Lian could detect a trace of loathing in his voice and was slightly taken aback. Hua Chang lowered his head and continued, "I don't want you to see me in such a helpless form, and I absolutely didn't want you to have to protect me." Maybe it was because Hua Chang's age had diminished that his emotions seemed to be unsettled. Xie Lian felt his heart stir, and he hurriedly hugged him in his arms, lightly patting his back as he laughed. "Then, according to that logic, I might as well die, since you've seen me in messes so many times," Xie Lian said. "Besides, it's not like you're completely useless right now. You're just temporarily storing your powers. That's all." Hua Chang buried his face in Xie Lian's shoulder and grumbled in a muffled voice, "It's not the same. Your Highness, I have to be the strongest. I have to make myself stronger than anyone else. Only then can I—" Although his voice was young and tender at the moment, there was a faint trace of abiding fatigue. Xie Lian soothed, "You've always been the strongest, but you don't need to be strong every waking moment of every day. Just think of this as giving me some face, and let me protect you this once. Please, okay?" It was a long time before Hua Chang lifted his head from his hug, and he placed his hands on Xie Lian's shoulders, watching him. "Your Highness, wait for me," he said. "All right, I'll wait for you," Xie Lian promised. Hua Chang very seriously assured again, "Give me a little time. I'll be back very soon." Xie Lian smiled. "No rush. Go at your own pace," he said. The next day, the two came to a small town. Xie Lian was holding Hua Chang's hand, and this pair of adult and child strolled along the streets, chatting leisurely. Xie Lian asked, "With the reopening of Mount Tonglu, all the preceding ghost kings were affected by the tremors. So does this mean that Blackwater is also affected?" Hua Chang had one hand crooked behind his back as he held hands with Xie Lian with the other. He replied, "Yes, but our situation is different. Our training methods are different, and so naturally our ways of resisting provocation are also different." "For example," Xie Lian asked, "how does he resist aggravation?" "Hibernation, probably," Hua Chang replied. The phrase, "eat when hungry, sleep when full," appeared in Xie Lian's mind. Hua Chang continued, "When Blackwater was only a mortal, he suffered the torment of jail. With only one meal every 3 days, even if he was given swill, he had to swallow it down. Hunger ruined his stomach. Sometimes he'd feed non-stop. Sometimes he'd reject eating anything at all. No wonder he was so impressive in devouring everything," Xie Lian mused. In truth, in He Xuan's situation, he could focus on devouring hungry ghosts. Because he possessed that attribute by nature, hungry ghosts should be more to his taste. Yet, in all the 500 some ghosts and demons devoured by Blackwater Demon Xuan, the majority were water ghouls. It must be because he remembered the face of Shahudu, and in order to break his water magic, He Xuan intentionally picked such meals. And when he swallowed too much, after a while, he would need to slumber to digest." "Indeed," Hua Chang said. I might as well mention that Chirong feasting on human flesh was him trying to imitate He on purpose. Shilian was speechless for a moment and thought, how can feeding on humans be the same as feeding on ghosts? Then, after pondering, he asked, then that forest of upside-down corpses, could it be that he was trying to imitate you? Correct, He replied, because he wanted to achieve the same bloody rain scenery, but didn't know how I did it. He simply and vulgarly hangs rows of dead bodies in the air. Today, Shilian could finally completely understand why every time Chirong was mentioned, no one knew what to say. He had all the appearance, but none of the class. Shilian sighed as he thought, Chirong has taken Guzi away. Who knows if the poor child was eaten or abandoned? Windmaster, who knows if Blackwater took him away? Pray that they're both safe. Then he asked, what about your ghost city? Won't anyone go stir up trouble there? He replied, I locked up the ghost city when I left and leaked some false information of my whereabouts. Even if anyone tries to start trouble, if they can't find me, they won't be too hard on them. But I'm sure that there are plenty of eyes watching that place right now. He couldn't return to the ghost city, and Shilian couldn't take him to the heavens either, lest he be exposed by a heavenly official. So the two frolicked in the crowds of the mortal realm without a destination in mind. Shilian slightly knitted his brows and said, you leaked false information, but Lingwen leaked real information. I still don't understand how she was able to see through your Langying disguise. What I don't understand is something else, He said. What? Shilian asked. That foul cultivator, Heaven's Eye. I've played him a couple times. His skills aren't bad, He said. Shilian agreed. It's true. He's really got the talent and put in the effort. Yeah, so why would he say that Gurga's lips are covered in the essence of evil? He questioned. Shilian's hands instantly clenched, but when he remembered that he was still holding hands with He, he immediately loosened his grip. He pressed with a low voice, Gurga, don't blow me off with words you'd use to placate idiots. Tell me just what exactly did I do to you that night? It's not what you did to me, more like what I did to you, Shilian thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Wait, Sanlang, look over there, he said. Gurga, He questioned. But Shilian was already pulling him into a luxurious and lavish store on the road. The owner at the counter looked the pair of them up and down, a curious combination of a cultivator and a layman. The owner asked, what can I do for you, Daojang? Shilian lifted He up and smiled. It's not for me, it's for him, he said. He tilted his head in his arms. An incensed time later, He emerged from the back of the store. Langying's clothes from before, fit for a 15 or 16-year-old, no longer fit the current He. So Shilian picked out a new outfit especially for him. The moment he emerged, Shilian's eyes brightened. What a skin as white as snow, little young master. Donning a robe as red as maple fire and a pair of deer leather boots hung with silver chains, He was both handsome and spirited. His raven locks were loose. Before, he only had a single thin braid next to his right cheek, but Shilian couldn't help but braid another one on his left to match, making him look even more sprightly. What was really too much, however, was his expression. His eyes were vivacious and bright, his air calm and steady, looking nothing like a child. Such a contrast, it made it difficult to look away. The ladies shopping in the store were all stunned, and they gathered around in a circle, their hands clutching at their hearts as they cried, "Ayo, ayo," in appreciation. Ho-Chang leisurely approached Shelian, and Shelian clapped lightly. "I knew it," he said. "Sun Lung looks best in red, after all." Ho-Chang helplessly pulled at the little braid on his left and grumbled, "As long as Gogo is happy." Shelian lowered his arm to seize his hand and smiled as they went to the storefront, ready to pay. Ho-Chang's outfit wasn't cheap, and Shelian didn't have much money to spare, so usually he wouldn't have entered such a store. However, he had saved up a small fortune for renovating the shrine, and now that there was nothing left to renovate, he could buy Ho-Chang some clothes first before he worried about anything else. Just as he was counting out his coins one by one, Ho-Chang squished over to his side and with a pop slapped a gold foil on the counter. Shelian, the owner, and the ladies were all speechless. "There's no need for change," Ho-Chang said. "Gogo, come on, let's go." He tugged at the corner of Shelian's sleeve, then exited the store with his hands at his sides. Shelian smiled and took a few steps too, when suddenly Ho-Chang backtracked and came in, bumping into his arms. Shelian held his shoulders and asked, "What's wrong?" Then he looked up and saw the shadow of a figure in the floating crowd on the streets, and his heart also lurched. Coincidentally, the store owner asked, "Would you two still like to purchase something else?" Shelian raised his hand and said, "Yes, please bring me that robe."